Hello everyone, here's Aquifil again. This time, in case you're wondering why I'm speaking English, I've decided to do all the wrestling related stuff. For example, the classic reviews, the recent pay-per-view reviews, outlooks, and something that's soon to come, Aquifil's 10 count. Classic, lists of 10 of, for example, best WrestleMania main events, best Royal Rumble winners, worst WCW pay-per-views, and finding the 10 worst, you have to sit through a lot of horrible stuff. But I'm gonna start with the review for the WWE Network show, The Monday Night War. Very interesting documentary. And we all know WWE released a DVD on the Monday Night Wars with a about 90 minutes, 2 hours documentary in 2003 or 2004. I can't really remember in which year. But of course, the Monday Night Wars were from September 1995 to or up until March of 2001. And it's about 6 years with the preludes which led to the war and the stuff that happened afterwards, which is related to the Monday Night War. Of course, 90 minutes or 2 hours just don't cut it. The documentary was interesting, but it didn't cover all things that should have been in there. And so WWE decided to have the network exclusive Monday Night War documentary, which consists of 20 parts. And of course, it's released on DVD too, but seriously, if you buy the network for the price, you have to pay $9.99 or I don't know, about €8. It's cheaper than the DVD. You get 1 month for free, so just check it out. But as I said, I want to review this documentary, and I'm gonna give you a short overview rather about the contents. As I said, 20 episodes, and I'm not gonna go through every episode itself. You can watch them if you're interested. I mean, you have an overview of them on the network site. Whether you're interested in one topic or not, it's up to you. But of course, there's a prelude, one episode, the prelude to the Monday Night Wars. Then, of course, it focuses on a lot of the stars that played an important role during the Monday Night War and became legends because of it. First of all, of course, the NWO is there, or the NWO is talked about. D-Generation X, of course, Mick Foley, Bret Hart, who played an important role too, maybe more important than some people realize. Then, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the cruiserweights of WCW, Bill Goldberg, Chris Jericho, The Rock, the Divas, of course. Sting and Undertaker get an episode for themselves, Foundations of War, because they both were the cornerstones, the people who stayed loyal throughout the whole stuff and were already stars when it started. Then, one episode focuses on a few stars that were not that influential, like the Giant, or I can't even recall who else was talked about. Some other stars that added to the depth of the roster. The role of the Clique, of course, is explained as on both sides of the Monday Night War, whether it was the WWF with Shawn Michaels or Hunter Hearst Helmsley, or as we now know him, Triple H. Then Scott Hall and Kevin Nash on the WCW side, and Sean Waltman, who went back and forth, so to say, so to speak. And of course, 2 episodes focus on the mistakes that WCW made, or the management made. One more on Eric Bischoff's mishaps, and one about the whole chaos that started when Bischoff was gone, came back, and to finish it off, of course, Life After Wartime, the last episode, is about everything what happened afterwards, after Vince McMahon bought the WCW. Another episode is about the Divas. Well, that's all in all 20 episodes, all very interesting. For example, I'm not gonna go into every single one of them. That would totally be, yeah, it would take too much time, and you don't want to listen to me for 40-50 minutes talking about each episode if you can watch them yourselves. As I said, the first month is free, and in that time you should be able to watch all the episodes. So the Divas episode was particularly interesting to me because, as I recall it, I was when the Monday Night Wars started was 10-16. I was born in 1985, so I lived through the war. I watched a whole lot of stuff they did during it, and for me, it's part of nostalgia talking about the Attitude Era and the Monday Night War. But I didn't recall the role of the Divas that much, as I was a young teenager, and so most of the Divas were just eye candy. And while many Divas were just eye candy, they're besides Trish Stratus and Lita, who everybody acknowledges as decent to pretty great workers in the ring. People like Sable, or of course Sunny's role in being the new diva, the first diva, not the lady wrestler from the 80s or 70s or early 90s, who often were, well, they weren't feminine, they were an afterthought. And I didn't recall how much the divas, apart from Sunny and maybe the Sable versus Mark Marrow storyline, how much they were involved in the stories. And it was interesting to see and get a whole other idea about the divas. Today we have the Divas Revolution, which doesn't do justice to the role the divas played back then. Maybe because, if you start a revolution and the Bellas are involved, let's say they're not my favorite workers, female workers. And on NXT, the divas, of course, are pretty awesome. They look fantastic. They, beside Nia Jax, but they look fantastic, and they can work in the ring. Not 5-star All Japan Women's Pro Wrestling classics, but they are, of course, not an extra attraction, or something you just have to have on the show. They really are an important part of NXT, and let's hope that sooner or later will be the same on the main roster, with the depth of quality they have on NXT. Charlotte, Becky Lynch is a start. We'll see where that goes. So, and of course, the documentary features a whole lot of information. Now, something we all knew already, that the cruiserweights were the backbone of WCW. The role ECW played, they get in episode 2, and how they innovated the hardcore wrestling that was pretty much well done by the WWE or WWF later on. They had a lot of no DQ matches, a lot of street fights, and it worked great. They took what ECW did to the mainstream. Well, WCW hardcore matches were, well, let's put it that way. The two most memorable ladder matches of WCW were probably 6 versus, I don't want to lie here, Eddie Guerrero, and the Starrcade 2000, I believe it was, 3 count versus, I don't know, the ladder 3-way. And compared to what WWE did with ladders, it's not even a different league. It's an entirely different sport, so to speak. WWE had great ladder matches, great hardcore matches. WCW, well, fell short. In the Divas division too, because most of the time they didn't have a Divas division, they had the Nitro Girls, cheerleaders. Nothing more, and well, you're not gonna get emotionally involved with cheerleaders. They're just fucking eye candy, and well, anyway, the documentary does a lot on, yeah, showcasing the differences, how things were done different. While, for example, WCW had the main event stars of the 80s and early 90s, yeah, carry their show and keep the talented young guys down. WWF had to utilize their talent with potential, like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, D-Generation X, people who sure were great or good workers, but they haven't found what made them great yet. Not really. And how WWF really built stars from, well, that's a decent worker, interesting guy, to the probably some of the best drawing superstars ever in sports, entertainment, wrestling, whatever you want to call it. Like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, they outdrew Hogan by not even 1 mile, but maybe 220, 1,000 miles. I don't know. And of course, how people like Chris Jericho, who in WCW were just afterthoughts, or they added to the show, but nobody recognized that this guy, for example, could be a main eventer. And when he debuted on WWE, or at that time still WWF, he just made a huge impact. Even though it took him a while to really live up to the hype, he made an impact, went head to head with The Rock in a promo, something not many guys have the balls to do, especially on their debut. So a lot of interesting stuff. They showcase how Sting and Undertaker were cornerstones of their respective corporate or promotions, and how they built Sting versus Hogan up for Starrcade 97 to be the match of the century, while Undertaker was constantly reinventing himself, keeping the keeping fresh, helping the company with good matches. And in the end, how Undertaker was still a huge star and delivered, and Sting, it's not his fault, but he fell short thanks to crappy booking. 1 year long, he doesn't go in the ring, he doesn't talk, and then he faces Hogan. He had an atmosphere about him, awesome. Everybody who watched it back then knows what I'm talking about. And then, it just fell flat. He won by a screw job or via screw job, and then lost the title and regained it. And by the time he regained the title, momentum was already shifting towards the WWE. So, as I have said, interesting documentary, no doubt about it. Still, there are a few things I like to criticize. First of all, many of the interview segments, something nice is that they have interviewed people like DDP, who talks a whole lot about it, have old and new interview clips from Nash, Hogan, Hall, a few from Undertaker, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, whatever you want. They had people who wrestled at the time, they had people who grew up watching it and are now wrestlers and thus understand the business better than most of us fans do, and they have a whole other level of insight. Still, I would have loved to hear a little bit more from some WCW guys who were totally underused, totally, screwed in that company. Of course, you won't hear Jeff Jarrett talk, but the problem is most of those guys were or became stars later in WWE. Some people who really got screwed by WCW and didn't get a chance in WWE afterwards because, well, you can only have so many stars that are huge. I would have loved to hear from those guys who never really got a chance, even after the war, and how they perceived it. I mean, we all know how Jericho thinks about WCW. We all know how Goldberg thought about certain things. We all know how Steve Austin felt. We all know how Bret Hart felt, how Mick Foley felt. And, well, as interesting as it is, a little bit fresher content in some areas would have been nice. Another thing I'd like to criticize, they have this episode, The War Goes Mainstream. And it's not about the episode per se, but they talk about the involvement of celebrities and, of course, how Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone or Mike Tyson helped their respective promotions. But yeah, we have the Jay Leno incident. I call it incident. It was not a match. It was an incident. It was horrible. And David Arquette winning the belt. And nice to hear from David Arquette. He wasn't too convinced about either that this would be a good idea. And of course it wasn't. So we have the flaws of WCW. And they talk about the dumbest things WCW did, like Jay Leno having an armbar on Hulk Hogan and he's selling the crap out of it. And you think, this out of shape talkmaster or showmaster, yeah, he can beat a real athlete. Yeah, of course he can. The suspension of disbelief was totally disregarded there, and not even the dumbest fans could really believe that. Not even I, as a was 1999, I think, or 1998. Well, I was 13, 14 at the time, and I didn't believe it. I was a young guy who just got into alcohol and parties and stuff, and not even I believed it. And I believed a whole lot of stuff that was going on. Anyway, they have many of the mistakes WCW did, booking crap and whatever, poor backstage politics. One thing they, in my opinion, failed to really emphasize was the importance of the Starrcade 1997 main event. As Bret Hart came in, and it could have made a huge impact, but no, he is a special guest enforcer. Most importantly, Sting. Everybody knows that Sting had to win the match. Otherwise, looking back, anything but a clean victory from Sting was not the payoff the fans wanted. But the WCW was so hell-bent on cramming the NWO down our throats and having them be the main attraction that, of course, Sting did not win clean. There was supposed to be a fast count and Bret Hart would storm in to save the day, but no, there was no fast count. Bret Hart just screwed Hogan out of what appeared to be a legitimate title defense. And well, that hurt, but of course it did not show in the ratings directly. So maybe that's why WWE did not really stress or emphasize that. But I believe that many fans at that time just said, ugh. Especially the older fans said that, wow, again, Hogan, yeah. He cannot lose clean. There always has to be a screwy finish in order for him to maintain his status. Well, that should have been a focal point at least in one or two episodes. And of course, another point of criticism, I don't know when they started filming this, but the first episode was released in July 2014, and by that time Sting, I believe, was under contract by the WWE. Why he did not talk about any of this, wasn't interviewed, Well, I guess that's a chance they missed. Mm. Last point of criticism, some of the, not only that, some people I would have liked to hear, although I can't really name them. Some people I would have loved to hear weren't involved. Other segments is not every interview, but some people, they have certain segments that appear on every second or third every other episode, and that's a little bit too repetitive, in my opinion, at least. Well, of course, the segments fit the topic of the episode, but well, if you watch it not week after week after week, but 2 or 3 episodes a day, well, it really is obvious that WWE reused some content, and it's a little bit boring to have the same segments, even if it's just about 30 seconds, 1 minute, uh, all the time and all over again, each other episode. When honestly, you have just watched the same segment and you know what they are talking about. Maybe some people don't have the attention span, but I don't forget the things I've seen, especially if I think it's interesting, after 1 day or two. So, well, they could have worked on that. But other than that, mm, it's a really really interesting documentary. I can really recommend it to everyone who is interested in the Monday Night War, in the history of wrestling, the more recent history, and of course, I have to say, people who would want to understand wrestling today, they have to look back not only to the Carl Gotches and Hackenschmidts and whatever, they have to, or the Bruno Sammartinos, Gorgeous Georges, and all the legends, they have to look at the Monday Night War. It was, for today's TV, even if Raw is not exactly awesome most of the time right now, although they have the best talent they had in years, you have to understand the Monday Night War, what happened, why the WWE and the WCW had to innovate themselves to become more famous, become more popular, become more successful. And these changes are still applied today and are still important today. You wouldn't have the John Cena's, Daniel Bryan's, especially a gimmick like Daniel Bryan. I don't know the guy personally, but I think his on-screen character has a lot of his real character in it, and I can literally see how people always say him, you want to be a wrestler, look at you, you're not tall, you're not a bodybuilder, and what the fuck. And he says, well, I don't care, I want to be the best at what I do, and I'm gonna be, and of course he is. So I can see how maybe his real personality plays into his on-screen persona, and that's something that was not unheard of before the Attitude Era or the Monday Night War, but to have it, play such a focal point in storylines and how or the gimmicks characters play, well, it's really vital. It was really vital to the evolvement of wrestling to what it is today. If the Monday Night War didn't happen, maybe we'd have we'd have plumbers, or I don't know, farmers wrestling each other today, if wrestling would be around, even around because we all know in the 90s, mid 90s, it often just sucked. WCW too, by the way. I was always a WWF guy. I only cared for the cruiserweights. The main event guys, I didn't want to see them anymore. Well, anyway, great documentary, has some flaws, but if you're interested in anything more than just recent pay-per-view results, or no, Roman Reigns, I don't know, if you're interested in the background, the story of why pro wrestling is the way it is today, watch this. It's highly interesting. And yeah, well, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you maybe look into the Monday Night War by WWE, because it's time well spent. It's entertaining, it's interesting. So then I'll say goodbye, and I hope you'll tune in next time for whatever comes next. Maybe a 10 count, maybe another review. We'll see. Till then, have fun.